From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
And good morning and welcome to Houston Newsmakers. I have a lot to get to this morning, starting with my very first guest representing the 18th Congressional District since 1995, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Good morning, Congresswoman.
Good morning to you. Good morning to all the wonderful viewers.
Yep, and good to see you.
And there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. We need more, but it's always nice to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a number of things to talk about. I do want to talk about some of the national stuff that's going on now, and you've been a big supporter of Hillary Clinton for a long time. It goes back more than a few years. And any concerns now? Because now she's got a pretty good little run. I mean, Senator Sanders is giving her a little bit of a run right now. Any concerns right now about her ability to take it to the finish line?
Well, I think it's a good thing. It's a vigorous campaign between the two Democratic candidates, and the tone is all about policy issues. And I certainly know Senator Clinton's, former Secretary Clinton's heart, but I also know she's a policy wonk, and she knows how to get things done. I call her the change agent with a plan. And it's good for Senator Sanders to vigorously be engaged in the debate. He certainly has a totally different perspective on how you balance government and incorporate the private sector. I happen to consider myself a progressive that believes that the banks should not be too big to fail, and so does Senator Clinton believe there should be fair trade and that jobs should be created. And I see all of that in her. So I welcome this debate. I welcome Senator Sanders' candidacy. I think what is most noted by the two candidates on the Democratic side is that they have been vigorous in disagreement on issues, but they've stayed above the fray. And they have focused on their policy differences, and both the American people and Democrats and independents who are voting in the Democratic primary get to see distinctions in real issues. And as it relates to Secretary Clinton, I think that she's going to run a strong race, and frankly, I'm hoping for her to be the nominee for the Democratic Party.
I'm going to read between the lines a little bit when you're talking about the policies and things like that. They are talking about that it's a little bit different than what's going on the Republican side. You watch with interest on what's going on that side of the aisle. What do you make of that? Well,
I take the words of Senator Rubio, who said his children were embarrassed, and he was embarrassed, and he apologized for his actions and words that he said. It is clearly, what I've heard is that parents who are trying to engage their children with civic involvement, they're embarrassed. They are obviously not eager to see children sit down in front of the television, which they should do, and see grown men and women fight. They really want them to talk about issues, and the beauty of this document that I hold here, the Constitution is only hold because civic engagement and participation. I don't like it. It's not entertaining for me. I'm as interested in what the Republican views are as the Democratic views. Why? Because we have Republicans and Democrats, and all of us should be concerned about the betterment of this country, the goodness of this country. We'll have to come together for the goodness of this country.
And there's a hope that you can work together.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of that hasn't happened over the last number of years, and that's probably why some of the energy of some of the people who are coming out now, they're angry about what's going on in Washington, D.C.
I think that's the case. They want to know that there's a government that not only cares about them, but acts on their behalf. And I see that kind of angst. But I will say that knowing former Secretary Clinton's heart, I frankly believe that in addition to her heart, she's a proven quality who's worked with Republicans and Democrats. So however this comes out, I want a president that will work on behalf of all of the people and take in all of our interests of concern. And as we have noted, it's all about jobs. It's all about making sure the economy goes forward and helping our children get a good, full education.
Let's talk about the voting process, because we know we had a lot of people coming out. More and more people are coming out to try to vote, including here on this past Super Tuesday. And here there were some unfortunate things that took place. We had what could be called voting irregularities. Certainly people standing in lines long after they should have been standing in lines, perhaps. And I know that as a congresswoman in your 18th district is part of the area that had some of the issues. What is your concern about what was going on here?
There were long lines, but I'm concerned about barriers to voting. I was out in my congressional district. It's a vast district, and I was way out north near the airport. I was in Acres Home in 3rd Ward, and I want to speak for those people. They should not have been treated that way. I know there are long lines in other parts of the community. In fact, no one should be treated that way. but there were people voting in my congressional district at 10:30 at night, not because they were late, but because they were standing in line as early as 5 o'clock.
Well, what's the answer to that?
The answer is, there are several answers. First of all, I want it to be known that I reported some of these irregularities to the U.S. Department of Justice, and I expect to get a report back from them. One is to pass the Voter Advancement Act that ensures that counties and states have a voting system that does not create a barrier, including the voter ID law, which is still in place, even though it was ruled unconstitutional.
You think that was part of a holdup?
Well, obviously, people digging for ID or not having the ID turned them away. But here's the issue. The monies are distributed from the state based upon the majority party, so who won the last election. This primary, or these primaries, were run by the Republican and Democratic party apparatus. But if you get less money, then you're going to have less sites, you're going to have less personnel, and for some reason or other, your machines don't work. Everywhere I went in my congressional district, if there were 6 machines, 2 were broken. There was not enough personnel. I consider those barriers to voting. And so I would argue that the state should not discriminate by giving disparate monies in a voting situation. Every party should get the equal amount of money that will fit providing citizens with a place to vote. One of the things I just want to finish on is we have a wonderful law in Texas, early vote. People are excited about it, and they go to it. What happens? They all get a sense that this is my voting poll. Right. And I stood at the early vote site in Acres Home, and there were eons of people coming. I stood with a list to say, no, this is not where you are. What's your precinct? Some knew and some did not. And I was able to give them the address of where they should vote. That should not happen. There should be enough media early on about you do not vote at your early vote site. Here is your precinct, and here's where you go. And they should not merge precincts so that the elderly, they were most impacted. The disabled would go to their home precinct and they could not vote. We have to change that on behalf of all of the people and all parties.
Well, certainly I wish you luck with that, because that's going to go through a lot of levels and a lot of people, maybe some pushback, I don't know. But I want to go to something you were at earlier this week. Zika virus is something a lot of people are concerned about. And now here in your district, in your area, we have something going on that really is what you could call really exciting. In fact, that the research here going on against the Zika virus. Talk about
Absolutely. And just as I lead into that, let me just say that those who were prohibited from voting also include disabled vets, which we are working very hard to get disabled vets free access to the hot lanes or metro. And we hope that we'll be victorious in March when that vote comes through and allow that to happen. I only say that because vets vote, and they need access and transportation, and we're working very hard with the Purple Heart Association and other Veterans Association to make sure that happens. But I'm excited about the response on the Zika virus because we're lucky enough to live in a city with major research institutions and, of course, many hospitals in the Texas Medical Center. We held this past week a forum on the Zika virus. It is alive and well. 22 cases have been diagnosed in the United States. This is a virus that comes out of mosquito. It is now harvesting in Brazil. We're concerned about the Olympics, but more importantly, we are a tropical climate community. Like Florida, like parts of Louisiana, like South Texas, like the Caribbean. The Caribbean and South and Central America are the targeted areas, along with Haiti. There's travel warnings about people going to those areas, but those people travel back to the United States. And the tragedy of this is many people have seen the pictures of those newborn babies born with no brains because it attacks the embryo in the mother's womb, and it has happened in Brazil. Our hearing today, this past week, indicated that there'll be 3 to 4 million people contaminated with the Zika virus. And the United States is now marching, if you will. One of the comments from Dr. Purser indicated that we must all be in the public health army. And so what we were doing here is getting the information out, telling people how to prevent it, saying what the federal government is going to do, working with the city, the mayor, the county, Judge Emmett, and all of the public health officials to be able to protect this area. And as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, that is what I wanted to do.
Well, you're staying too busy. You know that, right? Busy. But never too busy to come by here.
Not at all, and I'm delighted to be here. Let me congratulate HCC. We're getting ready to break ground on the North Forest campus. That will be a campus that will have medical disciplines and training and courses, but also will have the state-of-the-art automotive technology. We'll be able to do every car, and we're going to open that soon, and I hope everyone will join us in that celebration.
Thank you. Make sure we'll get there and cover it from KPRC Channel 2.
Love to do that.
Congresswoman,
it's a pleasure to be with you.
Once again for coming.
Thank you so very much.
And for being here, all your constituents, they love what you do, and we love you being here as well, coming for free of charge. That's a good thing.
Anytime.
That's a good deal. Hey, just ahead, the results, not what many expected, but the race for House District 27 is now down to 2. Attorney Angelique Bartholomew against incumbent Ron Reynolds. Ms. Bartholomew is here next when Houston Newsmakers continues. Welcome back to Houston Newsmakers. This was the final result of the race of the Democratic primary for Texas House District 27. Incumbent Ron Reynolds with 48.4% of the vote. Angelique Bartholomew with the highest number of the other 3 contenders with 24%. Angelique Bartholomew is here this morning with the challenge of trying to unseat a fairly popular incumbent, and that's been a challenge, I guess. But you're in the runoff, so you've got to be happy about that.
We are. We're very excited about being a part of the runoff, being in the runoff, and we think that we know families have spoken and said what they'd like to see happen in that district.
What is it that made you want to run?
We faced a lot of challenges in District 27 early on. I've been watching those challenges kind of escalate. Of course, the current incumbent has a lot of issues that he's definitely got to deal with. But more importantly, I was concerned for the other 170,000 people that are a part of that district in light of his circumstances. I'm very empathetic towards the situation that the incumbent is facing, as well as for his family. No one would like to see a family man experience the challenges that Representative Reynolds is experiencing, and I know that that has to be a challenge and a burden for his family. So I could not imagine that he'd have the focus, the time, and the energy to really put into the things that are needed in our district. What will have to happen in this session, in this upcoming session.
Well, you've been quoted. I saw a quote from somewhere that you said it wasn't about him, it was about the issues in the district. So the fact that he was convicted of bigotry was something that, and he's appealing that conviction, by the way, but you think that's taking away from the focus that he should have for the position?
Well, I don't know about you, Khambrel, but there aren't too many places that either of us could actually have a job and experience a conviction. He has a conviction for bigotry. And aside from that, a lot of things that you have to deal with when it comes to facing prison time and the amount of time you have to spend dealing with the court issues, even on appeal. It will not only distract you, it will cause emotional troubles.
By the way,
you can't really focus on you know, what you have to do in your job, and I can't imagine that you can keep your job.
And I do want the audience to know that I extended invitations to both of the candidates who are running for that position, and you accepted, and that's great. I'm not sure what happened to the other invitation, but that's the way it goes. What is it you think you can do better than Representative Reynolds has been able to do for your district?
Well, in light of the situation facing Representative Reynolds, I believe that we've got to put a central focus on education. We've got to address the issues of school finance, and that's been something that's been ongoing. We're in a structural deficit in the state of Texas as it relates to education. We spend less than the national average per student. We've got swelling classroom sizes, and we've really got to put things in place to address school finance instead of kicking the can down the road regarding the court order that says our schools are unconstitutionally financed.
I looked at the breakdown of the voting, and throughout those precincts, Ron Reynolds still won almost all of them, really, a lot of them. You were second in most of them, but the challenge is going to be significant for you to pull the numbers together to overtake him in the general, or do you not believe that to be the case?
I believe that to be the case. I was very excited that several opponents stepped up to address the concern in our district and to run for office. That's definitely something that I believe energizes the Democratic Party to have multiple candidates participate in the primary. But in light of that, I believe people coming together, recognizing that a change has to take place with those three opponents and myself involved, I think that we're able to pull those numbers off. And it's going to be a matter of stressing to people how important a runoff is when you're getting back out to the polls.
That's true. It's coming up on May 7th, Saturday, May 7th. What do you say to the potential voter who's looking right now to convince them to vote for you on May 7th?
You know, May 7th is actually another race. It is our primary, our runoff is actually May 24th.
Okay.
So people have got to go to the polls for the May 7th elections, and then they've got to return May 24th. So we're just telling people it's critical, and it's important that you pay attention to the runoff election, because this is where you decide who is going to be best suited to face off in the general election in November. That person has got to be ready and prepared for that fight. And in light of the situations, we don't want to have the vulnerability for this seat. So our district is traditionally Democrat, but we've fueled the fire for Republicans, I think. We've got to really pay attention to the vulnerability that we face in the general election in November if we don't step up with a candidate that's prepared to fight and win District 27.
Well, Angelique Bartholomew, I appreciate you accepting my invitation. I hope that you'll be able to do it again at some point in time, maybe a little bit further along, maybe even closer to the runoff.
Absolutely.
We'll extend that invitation for you to do so. Maybe we'll have Representative Reynolds come in at that time.
I certainly want to thank you for having me on the show. I do watch, and we love the show, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the shout out. That's what that was, I think. Just ahead, you can help the families of the men and women who've been wounded in action. A great program to talk about. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers, where we have the opportunity to help a great organization doing great things for the children of our military men and women who've been wounded or killed in action. It's called Operation Red, White, and Bike, and here this morning to talk about the organization and the big event coming up, Larry Reed is the co-founder of Operation Red, White, and Bike. Felix Garcia is the commander of the Department of the Texas Military Order of the Purple Heart. Dr. Bob Morrow is the Houston Regional President of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Larry, talk about how this organization came about.
Okay. About 8-9 years ago, I was riding my bicycle down Bay Area Boulevard, and I said, you know, we need to do something to recognize children of combat wounded soldiers. So I talked to my friend at BP, Colonel Clark, who retired from the military. He said, that's a great idea, especially if we make it for Purple Heart recipients. So that's kind of where it all started. And we did our first bike ride a year or so after that, and here we are.
And now it's grown from you just getting an idea while you're riding your bike. That's amazing. And Felix, you are a Purple Heart recipient, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for your service, first of all.
All.
Tell me about this unique bond of Americans who sacrificed, and what kind of impact being in that group of people who received the Purple Heart, the relationship that you have now with this organization, and how good that can be for you.
The relationship I have with Red, White, and Bike, my family, well, my two daughters received a bicycle from the organization about 3 years ago. Yeah. After that, I asked Mr. Reed if I could go ahead and help him with anything that I was here. About a year later, he asked if I wanted to become a board member of the organization, and I said, yes, of course. You know, it's amazing to me when you got people that went to war and came back, which I had some of those Marines that had kids that their dads never came home. It's very hard as a military service member to see that. Mm-hmm. But when you have an organization out there like Red, White, and Bike, it's amazing. All the organizations out there, all they worry about is the veteran itself, and they leave the families behind. And one of the things about this organization, it's the veteran is important, but at the same time, the children mean more.
Well, I have a feeling, because Dr. Morrow, you've been on my program before. We've talked about some of the things that Blue Cross and Blue Shield does. When he said families, you perked up, because that's kind of what your organization really focuses on, is it not?
You know, absolutely. I mean, at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas, we've really long recognized and appreciated the sacrifices made by our military men and women, and also their families. And as a member-owned organization that's been the oldest and largest insurer in the state of Texas, the opportunity to show support for our little heroes through the Red, White, and Bike program, I think is just tremendous.
And you've had a chance now to focus on, because this program has been going on. It wasn't Blue Cross and Blue Shield was not a sponsor up to this point. What more can you add to it? I mean, obviously it gives it a little bit more, quote, juice, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have struggled for years just with our supporters that ride bikes, and that's how we raised our money. And we're a BPMS 150 recommended ride. And we have a lot of loyal people that come out and ride bicycles every year.
What's the event that's coming up? It's called...
That's April the 10th. It's the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas Bike for Little Heroes. And there are 4 routes based on different levels. And we are fully supported. We have rest stops. We have porta potties. We have Gatorade, the whole 9 yards. We have police. We'll have 11 or 14, I think it is, police officers out there. And it's a big deal.
Well, I have a full screen graphic up to tell people, to remind you. So the Bike for Little Heroes, it's Waller High School Stadium. And what time does it start?
It starts at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, we'll be doing a couple of interesting things. One is we'll be honoring 6 little heroes for their bicycle and giving them some bicycles. And they're Trek and Specialized bike. I don't know whether you're familiar with bike, but that's the high end of bicycles.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention is anyone who's gotten a Purple Heart rides free.
Well, it's a great program. I want to remind you that www.redwhiteandbike.org is the address as well. And we're going to do a Houston Newsmakers Extra here as well. So this is going to be great. Stick around at the end of our show. Go to the website. Go to clicktohouston.com. Under the news banner, click on Newsmakers. Go to the site. We're going to have a Newsmakers Extra on this program. Coming up, final thoughts about what we have going on next week when we come back. March is Read Out Aloud Month. We've got a very special guest here next week to talk about that. I hope you'll tune in. You don't want to miss that. Thank you to my guests for joining me this morning and to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you back here again next week.